Well, howdy, folks. My name is Drew, and welcome to the very first episode of Macintosh Makeover. Macintosh Makeover is a brand new series where we take Macintoshes, both old and new, and upgrade the living daylights out of them or just otherwise give them makeovers. Macintosh Makeover is brought to you by the Southern Colorado computer enthusiasts. Be sure to check out our Facebook group and our Discord server using the links in the description. On the bench today is an iMac G3 Indigo from early 2001. It sports an IBM PowerPC 750 processor, otherwise known as the G3. On the graphics side, we have an ATI Rage 128 Pro featuring a whopping 8 megs of video memory. As for the RAM, the iMac G3 Indigo came stock with 64 megs of SD RAM. Not gigabytes, megabytes, and only 64 of them. For the internal storage, the iMac G3 Indigo came stock with a 10 gigabyte IDE hard drive. No solid state storage here, but we'll be fixing that soon enough. If you were hoping to play DVDs on this thing, you are out of luck. This iMac only came with a 24-speed CD-ROM drive. Not even a burner. Last but not least, the G3 Indigo came with 2 USB ports and 2 FireWire ports. We'll be using one of the FireWire ports for an external DVD burner. Now that we've got the basic specs out of the way, let's get the party started. Alright folks, as I said in the intro, my name is Drew and this is Macintosh Makeover. The iMac G3 I have sitting in front of me today is from early 2001, which makes it one of the last G3 iMacs ever made. There were a couple after it, and then Apple switched to the G4. The G4 from IBM was a massive improvement over the G3. It was fast, it was pretty efficient, and it just worked really well. Now, Apple made a number of different lines of computers. They obviously made the iMacs, and then they made the laptops, the iBooks, the PowerBooks, and then they also made the towers. You might remember the beige and white G3s or the blue G3s, and then there was the Quicksilver G4s, and then they switched to the G5. Now, the G5 was fast. It was really fast. But the main problem with it is it ran hot. It ran really hot, which is why the G5 never actually made it into laptops because Apple just could not get the thermals under control. Fast forward to today, and now they've switched to their own ARM-based silicon because, let's just face it, the thermals on Apple's laptops with Intel chips are garbage. They thermal throttle like crazy, and in fact, I'm actually recording this on a MacBook Pro from 2016 with an i7, and even it thermal throttles like crazy. Even though it's a shaved i7 with only 4 cores and no hyperthreading, it's just absolutely wild. So before we get started today, there's a few things that I want to go over. The first thing is the upgrades. Now, as I said earlier, the iMac G3 Indigo came with a paltry 10 gigabyte IDE hard drive. Not only was it small, it was also slow. Today, we're going to be upgrading that with this, a 120 gig solid state serial ATA drive from Otherworld Computing. Now hold up a second. Drew, you said the iMac G3 had a IDE hard drive, yet we're upgrading it with a serial ATA drive? What the heck is that? The iMac G3 didn't have serial ATA, did it? Well, you're right. It didn't. But we have one of these. Otherworld Computing, when you buy one of their drive upgrade kits, comes with this. This is a serial ATA to IDE converter. Takes the serial ATA interface from your drive and converts it to the IDE interface used by the iMac. Otherworld Computing makes parts for new Macs, old Macs, all kinds of Macs. If you ever need parts for your Macintosh, hit up Otherworld Computing at macsales.com. You will not be disappointed. Now, the second thing we're going to be upgrading on this iMac is the RAM. As I said earlier, the RAM that came with this thing just wasn't that much. It was only 64 megs. Now, it is user upgradable, and officially it can be upgraded to, I think, 512 megs, but unofficially, we can go a lot further than that. Today, we have not one, but 2 512 meg SD-RAM sticks from, you guessed it, Otherworld Computing. So the other thing that I wanted to mention is that when I got this thing a couple of weeks ago, I started it up and it worked fine. It booted up into macOS 9. There was some software on it from the previous owner, but that's not a big deal. We can erase the drive and reinstall macOS 9. Not a problem. The problem was that every time I started it up, it would make this growling, grinding noise for a couple of seconds. Like, this thing was angry. It was really angry. Now, I wasn't totally sure what was making this sound. Could it be the hard drive going out? It is from 2001 after all, so that's a total possibility. The other possibility was maybe there was a disk stuck in the CD drive. It's a slot loader, so it's not really easy to force disks out if there is a disk in there. So I had to take it apart a little bit. I took the drive bay out after taking the casing off, and to my horror, saw something that you never want to see, especially with slot loading drives. I'm looking at the drive, and I see not one, but two disks in the drive. Now, what does that probably mean? Children. So using some tweezers, I take the first disk out. What is it? Children's software. I take the second disk out. What is it? More children's software. This thing was definitely heavily used by children. Now, I used to be a children, and I know what children can do to electronics, and they destroyed this thing. Like, the CD drive doesn't work anymore. I literally had to throw it out because the noise that it would make every time that I started up was absolutely horrible. Now, the last thing that I need to mention is this. You probably see this mark here on the corner of the iMac. What this is the internal plastic actually falling apart. Now, we've already determined that this thing was heavily used by children. There's no question about that. Now, I don't know if they dropped it several times or drop kicked it. I mean, a child probably can't drop kick an iMac. They're kind of heavy. But the point is, they destroyed this thing, and we're going to try to undestroy it as much as possible. So with all that out of the way, let's get to the makeover. So replacing the drive and the memory is pretty easy. There's two screws, one right here, and there's two more screws in the back hidden by this plate here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our handy dandy iFixit screwdriver, not sponsored, but if you're not a tool and you need some tools, iFixit is the place for you. Let's see here. The best way to go about this is to use a screwdriver. I prefer this flathead screwdriver, but we can just pop this guy out like that, pop, and out it comes. To reveal the other screws that we need to take out here. Pull up on this guy, and it lifts right off like that. Put this off to the side. Now, as you can see right here, here are the two RAM slots that this thing actually came with. Now, this iMac was definitely upgraded by its owner to 384 megs of RAM. We got the stock 64 meg and then a 256 meg stick. We're going to be replacing all of that. Now, in order to do that, there are a few screws that we need to take out. There's one here, there's one here, we've got one over here, and these two guys right here. Now that we've got all these screws, we just pull up on this little tab right here. And with just a little bit of force, out comes that. Now, we'll turn this thing around to reveal the board. This is the entire motherboard. It's a dual-sided board. The processor's on the other side. We've got our graphics chips and our graphics memory on this side. This is a really, really well laid out board. So I guess let's go ahead and do the memory first. We just pop this out here, pop that guy out here, this guy, and that guy, and the RAM just pulls right out. And go ahead and install our new memory chips. I do not recommend doing this without an ESD strap. I'm doing this without an ESD strap because I know what I'm doing. That said, there is a risk. Pop. Make sure that's in there. So make sure you do not touch the gold contacts on the RAM chips. Or I should say the RAM modules. That right there. And oh, that's not quite aligned. And pop, pop. And those are seated well. So that's the memory. Now, the hard drive is a little bit more complicated. As you can see, the hard drive is right here. We got the IDE cable and a standard Molex power cable. Now, this cable is a pain to take off. Let's see here. What we are going to use is a pair of tweezers. There we go. Woo! That's what I'm talking about. Big, strong man. All right. And then we just pull this IDE cable out just like that, and we're good to go. Now, the unfortunate thing about the kit that you get from OWC is that the bracket that converts the 2.5-inch drive to the 3.5-inch drive doesn't actually work. It doesn't work with this iMac because, as you can see, the screws holding the hard drive in are actually right here, not on the sides like you would normally have. So this is going to be kind of janky. Just pull this guy out, I think. Tuck this down in here. And we can just pull the drive out. How about that? So this is the original 10 gigabyte hard drive that came with the thing. We don't need that no more. So while filming earlier, I totally broke this thing. They're super fragile and just... But we got a replacement. IDE, serial ATA. Let's do this thing. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to very carefully plug that thing in. We're going to rip this cable out. And it's keyed, so we can plug it right in here. we're done. Well, that about wraps it up for the hardware part of this makeover. If you liked what you saw today, make sure you hit that like button and get subscribed, because next time on Macintosh Makeover, we're going to take this iMac and install Mac OS 9, Mac OS 10, and then we're going to play some sweet retro games.